Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm really sick.
And today we're talking about Superman Returns. I've been wanting to talk about this movie since we started the podcast. Released in 2006, directed by Bryan Singer, written by Michael Dougherty and Dan Harris, from a story by Bryan Singer, Michael Dougherty, and Dan Harris, and starring Brandon Routh, Kate Bosworth, Kevin Spacey, James Marsden, Parker Posey, Frank Langella, Sam Huntington, Eva Marie Saint, Cal Penn, and even a little cameo from Marlon Brando. This was the long-awaited Superman movie. They'd been trying to get Superman off the ground for many, many years.
Yeah.
And this, like I said, was released in 2006. The previous Superman movie was 1987, I believe. Superman 4, which we talked about a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Stu, Superman has always been my favorite superhero, and I waited basically my entire life to see this movie because I don't think I was old enough I was old enough. I was only 4 when Superman 4 came out, so might not have been old enough to really go see movies in the theater yet. And either way, if I saw it, I don't remember it. So I was dying to see a Superman movie on the big screen. And when we started this podcast, we talked about the first episode was Man of Steel, and I knew I could not wait to talk about Superman Returns. Didn't really expect it to take us 11 years to get there, but here we are finally talking about Superman Returns. When I saw it in the theater, it was glorious. I was like a kid on Christmas the entire time. Those opening credits, it was amazing. I went and saw it 6 times, I want to say. I drove out to the Mall of Georgia to see it on the IMAX, even though none of it was shot with IMAX. And actually, when you went and saw it in the IMAX, parts of the movie were in 3D. Not the entire thing, just certain scenes, which was interesting. But I didn't care. It was still amazing. And it really bummed me out that other people didn't seem to be loving it as much as I did. Do you recall seeing this movie for the first time and what you thought about it?
I do. I did not see it when it came out. I saw it, I want to say maybe a year after it came out. It came out in 06, so I probably saw it in like 07. I was on vacation with my mom and my grandmother, and I bought the DVD at a flea market or something. Mm-hmm. And I had heard that it wasn't very good, but I bought it anyway because it's superheroes, it's Superman.
Right,
why not?
Sure, yeah, exactly.
And I watched it and I enjoyed it. I was like, people really didn't like this. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like it's not a whole lot of action in the movie,
right?
But it was enough for me. And I was never head over heels for the movie. Mm-hmm. But as time has gone on, I have such an appreciation for this movie. Now, that being said, there's still some things that I don't quite like about it. The one thing is kind of awkward, but we'll get into it. But overall, this is still a really, really good movie, in my opinion. And if I'm being honest, it's probably my second favorite Superman movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. After Man of Steel.
Yeah.
It's probably this one, and then Donner Cut Superman 2.
Nice. You saying that you had heard that it wasn't very good. I was a champion for this film from the get-go, but yeah, there were so many of my friends who would say, it wasn't, they either said that wasn't very good, or they'd be like, man, that movie sucked. And I was just like, what movie were you guys watching? And I had one friend text me or message me on social media or whatever, Facebook back then, I guess, who was like, this movie was just a love story. And I was like, well, yeah, but I mean,
well, yeah.
And then I heard other people complain. They're like, man, Superman doesn't even punch anybody. And I was like, there's nobody for him to punch in this movie.
Right.
He would kill whoever he punched in this film. So obviously they were wanting more of a Man of Steel fight between somebody like Zod and Superman. And
the ironic part is that we get that and people still complain.
I know. So I can understand the criticism that maybe it's not original, and I think Bryan Singer set out to, I mean, this is kind of an unofficial Superman 3. It doesn't quite line up, I don't think, with Superman 2, but there's stuff that happens in Superman 2 and Superman the movie that is referenced in this film. I guess they were probably trying to make it more of like a requel, a reboot, kind of reinvent.
I think that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, they were trying to reboot the Superman franchise, but also kind of have it be a part of the Richard Donner universe. Yeah. And it, for me, it really worked. I think for other people, they were wanting something different. And then, but like you said, then, 7 years later, we got something different and they didn't like it. They wanted it to be more classic Superman. And so it's like, you just can't make anybody happy. For me, I've always considered this movie a love letter to the Richard Donner Superman, the movie, and Superman 2, even though the Donner cut came out in 2006. It was released because this movie was coming out. Yeah. So the filmmakers hadn't, Bryan Singer maybe had seen something of it, but probably not as they were shooting this movie. Yeah. So he's really, this is a sequel to the theatrical version of Superman 2, which is a mishmash of Richard Donner stuff and Richard Lesser's stuff. But like I said, it worked for me. Brandon Routh, I loved him as Superman. I loved the incorporation of the John Williams score. I loved the connection to the previous movies. I loved Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor. I loved how it was very similar to Gene Hackman's, but with his own kind of take on it. This Lex Luthor is more menacing, I think.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth.
Yeah. He, say Kevin Spacey, we all know, is not a good person and has basically been blacklisted from Hollywood. With that being said, aside from Michael Rosenbaum, I think, I love this version of Lex Luthor. I was going to say he's my favorite. I don't know. Gene Hackman's still up there, but I really like this version of Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin Spacey was at the time a good choice to play him. Obviously, I wouldn't bring him back or anything, but
right.
But I was, and at the time, I really liked Kevin Spacey, not knowing any of that stuff.
Yeah,
he was one of my favorite actors, and so him being cast as Lex Luthor, I thought was perfect. So yeah, I didn't really, I thought it had enough action. It was all just Superman being Superman and saving people and putting out fires literally and stuff like that. So it wasn't, I wasn't missing any of the fight scenes or anything. I really enjoyed all of the action that this movie had, and all of the softer, quieter, character moments as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and be blunt and just say it. So forgive me, but you superhero nerds don't know what you want. It's plain and simple. You complain about this movie not having action and Superman not fighting anybody. You get that in Man of Steel, and then you complain that it was too much destruction. What in the world do you want? Mm-hmm. You can't answer that because you don't know what you want.
Right. I think, like I said, you can't make everybody happy. I think this movie critics really like this movie. It doesn't have a perfect Rotten Tomato score, but 74% of the critics gave it a favorable review. And the audience score is a 61%, which I think has gone up over the years. I don't think that was, if you had taken an audience score back in 2006, I don't think it would have been nearly as high as 61%. I think this movie, people have grown to like this movie. I think people who were kids when this movie came out are now adults and are online. And so it's kind of like with what we saw with the Star Wars prequels. Everybody hated the Star Wars prequels back when they came out. And now that we're 20 years away from the release, suddenly now there's a lot of love for the prequels online and everything. It's because those kids grew up.
It's really a lot of love for Revenge of the Sith, because I don't think anybody is singing the praises of Attack of the Clones.
That's very true. I actually never see any praise for Attack of the Clones online. I do see some for Phantom Menace. I just,
that's mostly nostalgia.
Right. But you're right. But I do see love for this movie now, which is nice. I like it. But I'm like, where were you guys in 2006? So
right, where were you 18 years ago?
Right. Now that being said,
that's how people do. That's Man of Steel is the same way. People all of a sudden liked Man of Steel when Justice League came out because it was so far removed from anything that Zack Snyder had previously done with Superman. And then when we got what we got with Justice League, all of a sudden, all of these people come out of the woodwork saying how they love Man of Steel, and that was solidified and amplified when Zack Snyder's Justice League came out. It's like, where were you in 2013? Mm-hmm. And they do the same thing with Spider-Man. I've always loved Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. His movies have flaws, but I still think that he is a great Spider-Man. And it wasn't until No Way Home came out that people just started singing the praises of Andrew Garfield. I'm like,
right,
where were you guys when his movies came out?
Yep.
Like, why do you have to wait until something new comes out to show your appreciation for it? Yeah, it feels inauthentic to me.
Right.
And I don't mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mean to gatekeep, but it's like, it's kind of like, just stay over there, man.
Like all, I don't mean to gatekeep, but you're not welcome.
Yeah. I don't mean to gatekeep, but I'm gonna keep you out of this gate.
right, exactly.
But no, like seriously, it makes me wonder what changed that so many people. Now, don't get me wrong, I have changed my opinions on movies many times, but when it comes to comic book movies, people come out in droves announcing their love and appreciation for a movie or a character or an iteration of a character that the masses hated before. And I don't know, man. It's maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe, like you said, the kids who saw Superman Returns and the kids who saw Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2 are now adults and are on the internet. So maybe that's what it is, but I'm not gonna lie, man. It bothers me. It's like it just feels like people are following a trend. If a certain group of people say that they hate it, then everybody hates it. And then that same group of people change their mind, and now everybody has changed their mind about it. It's like, I've always liked Superman Returns. I've always liked Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. I've always liked Henry Cavill's Superman. It's I don't know. Maybe I need to change my tune.
It kind of makes me feel it's kind of like fair weather sports fans, right? Who only really care about the team if they're winning the championship or whatever.
Yeah.
And if they're losing games, and they're like, your team or our team sucks. They don't. It's like, I don't know. That's kind of what it reminds me of. It's a little different, I guess, but that is what it feels like. It's like No Way Home is a really good movie. Andrew Garfield was really good in it, and people were like, "Oh man, they should make another Andrew Garfield movie." And you're like, "Well, he's always been good. Like, it's not like this is just new." Yeah, and so it is kind of weird how they do that, and it is a little bothersome. It's like, but I came out of this movie thinking this was the greatest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah. I get it. Like with me with Justice League, I before the movie even came out, I said, I'm gonna like this movie because this is all I have.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm and it was more or less it was less of like and more of appreciation and having gratitude for what I was given. Right. Even though I knew it wasn't very good, I was like, it's still here and I'm still going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, but I have since changed my tune. And while I do have there's still a small level of appreciation for that movie. It's it sucks. And I would rather not watch it.
Right. Right. Obviously, given the choice, I'm going to choose Zack Snyder's Justice League over the Justice League version.
It has a really good 4K though. That 4K is great.
Oh, really? Nice.
The movie sucks. Yeah.
I don't have it on 4K. I only have it on Blu-ray.
Unfortunately, I have it on 4K and Blu-ray because I bought the Steelbook, the Jim Lee Steelbook, because the Jim Lee Steelbook is fire.
Yeah, I kind of actually wish I'd gotten that. So yeah, this movie, I'm still waiting on a 4K release. Although I read that this movie was shot digitally and I could be getting this wrong, but was shot like in 1080. So I don't know. They'd have to do some. I don't know how they would upscale it to 4K, but I'm sure they could. But something
What
about
does that have to do with anything? They convert film into 4K.
Well, yeah, but film itself has like a higher resolution than shooting digitally.
Yeah.
So taking the actual film negative or whatever, I think they're able to convert stuff. I don't know. I feel like I can't remember what I read, but I remembered somebody saying that it was unlikely we were going to get a 4K of Superman Returns. But I don't know. We'll see. I was bummed when they put out the Christopher Reeve 4K box set that Superman Returns wasn't included, and that's I think when I read that. So we'll see. Hopefully they do, but the Blu-ray might be the best we get. I don't know. When you saw this movie, you had seen some of the Christopher Reeve films. I know you hadn't seen 4 yet because you watched that for the first time for the podcast, right?
Yeah, I had seen 1 and 2.
Okay. Well, you saw the ones that mattered then for the.
I think I had seen 3 because I remember being a kid and watching Richard Pryor in it. So yeah, I'd seen 3.
So my question for you is, and this is like a daunting undertaking, I guess you could say, for Brandon Routh, because he's obviously meant to be the Christopher Reeve Superman. How do you feel about how his portrayal of Clark Kent / Superman?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah,
it was great. And this is not a knock on Brandon Routh. One of the things that I don't care for about this movie is Superman is kind of corny. And that's not a knock on Brandon Routh. That's just something that's a personal preference, because I know a lot of people like that. I'm okay with Clark being corny. I want Superman to have charisma. I like Superman being completely different than Clark.
Right. Are you talking about like Christopher Reeve used to do this? He'd be like, bye now. He's just very kind of like,
yeah.
I don't know how to say it other than like friendly. But like,
not necessarily friendly. So like they did a callback his Superman's reintroduction when he saves the plane.
Yeah.
He said, the flight is still the safest way to travel. It's like, and it's not what he said, it's the way he said it. And people like that. And I just don't like it.
Yeah. That line has never bothered me because it was an homage, obviously, to Superman the movie. He says that to Lois Lane after the helicopter crash. He says it's still the safest way to travel or whatever. And so in this movie, I hope none of this has put you off flying. Statistically speaking, it's still the safest way to travel. Yeah, it is a little cheesy. I grant you that. It doesn't bother me, but I can understand that criticism. I can understand not wanting Superman to necessarily be like that. I think those type of lines, though, do make him a little bit more personable.
Yeah.
Like it brings, he's trying to be a little bit more like down to earth, I guess you could say, kind of.
Yeah.
But I can understand not liking that line or those kind of moments. I think Brandon Routh is awesome as Superman. His Clark Kent doesn't quite work for me. It's fine. It works for me. It's just it's not as believable. There's not as believable a difference as Christopher Reeve did it. And I have heard some people say that
I agree.
Christopher Reeve's Clark was more cartoony, which I guess you could say, but I think we talked about it with Superman 4, the physicality difference that Christopher Reeve did. And I think
he slouched a lot.
Yeah. I just think I love Brandon Routh, don't get me wrong, but I just think you could tell that he is not quite as strong of an actor as Christopher Reeve was. Mm-hmm. And part of that might be the direction. Bryan Singer maybe didn't want him to go that far with Clark Kent. Maybe he wanted him to be a little bit more subtle and whatnot. And there are a couple of great... One of my favorite moments in the movie is when Richard and Lois are kind of realizing that Clark Kent has similar features as Superman. They're like, how tall do you think Clark is? And they're like, what do you think he weighs? 210, 250? And he's obviously hearing them. And then he looks around like he's, just kind of being silly. And then he sees them and he's like, oh, hey. And they start laughing. I love that moment because they're like, what were we thinking? And I think it was like perfect. I think Christopher Reeve would have done
I do like that moment.
Yeah, I think Christopher Reeve would have done a little differently, but that's not to say that that would have been better or anything. But I think it
Christopher
is less,
Reeve would have like spilled his drink or something.
Right,
He
yeah,
probably
he
would.
would- yeah,
He
been-
probably wouldn't have acknowledged him. He would have spilled his drink or tripped or something. Like
right. Yeah,
done something like completely.
all of the above.
Yeah,
He would have knocked over something. The papers would have gone flying.
Yeah.
He would have, fallen over or something, which I think would have been good. But yeah, no, I like the way it is in the movie, and so I really like Brandon Routh as Superman. It's a shame we never got to see him in another Superman movie. I do like that we did get to see him suit up one more time on the CW Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event that they did. That was pretty cool with the Kingdom Come Superman logo and everything.
And apparently that is the same Superman.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is pretty cool. So speaking of Superman suits, like I just mentioned this, the Kingdom Come suit. How do you feel about this Superman suit?
I like it for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really like it, but again, it's just for this movie. I guess if I had to rate it, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 because, well, one, it's not even the suit. It's Brandon Routh's hair.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward. Does he have on a wig? It looks like he has on a wig.
It might be a wig. I noticed that watching it this time around. Like, I've never really thought about it before, but I actually think he's wearing a wig when he's Clark Kent.
Yeah.
And so he might be wearing a wig for both. I'm not sure.
Probably, maybe.
The scene where he's getting beat up by Lex's goons on the New Krypton, and he's got the hair hanging in his face, I think that's his real hair. So I think his Superman, it's his real hair, but they did so much to it in an attempt to get that curl. And I appreciate that they tried to do the curl.
Yeah.
I just think they shouldn't. I think they should have just made him have more of a natural, slick back kind of hairstyle or something.
Yeah.
It just would look better.
Like, I mean, not to compare it, but like with Man of Steel, like I guess I am comparing it, because I don't want to talk too much about Man of Steel, but
sure,
with Man of Steel, he had like the way they did the curl. It wasn't. He didn't have a curl on purpose.
Right.
The curl kind of came down in the midst of battle, and I love the way it looked.
Yeah, I actually really like. Henry Cavill has almost like kind of a natural curl to his hair anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
Henry Cavill was born to be Superman.
Yeah, he was. I think his hair looks better in Man of Steel and I don't dislike the slick back kind of look that he's got in Batman vs Superman, but I think his hair looks better in Man of Steel than in Batman vs Superman.
I disagree. I like it better in better in
Batman.
BVS. Than Man of Steel. However, I do miss the curl. If I could get that BVS hairstyle with the curl, I mean, I guess he like it, the curl. You know, his hair came down during the battle with Batman, so I guess it was still there. But yeah, I like he has shorter hair in BVS, so I'm a less is more type person.
Understood, understandable.
Yeah,
but no, I completely agree with you about the curl in this movie. It was so obvious that they had to try really hard with like some sort of hot iron or something to get that curl, and then probably spray it with a touch of because it was just
it's like they put too much mousse in his hair or something.
Like the scene that's on my TV right now is him rescuing Kitty. And his hair doesn't look bad in that, but there are other times where that curl is just so like kind of noticeable, and it's just
when to me it was when he landed at the hospital with Kitty that I noticed his hair looked very awkward. I was like, I'm not really feeling that.
Yeah.
But as far as the suit itself, I love the color of it. I love how blue the
blue is.
How blue the blue is. The cape, I wish was a little longer, but I don't dislike it.
I appreciate that it's longer than Christopher Reeve's cape. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the Superman symbol. I love this Superman symbol. Like next to Henry Cavill, this is my favorite Superman symbol. Yeah. I love it so much.
I'm on the exact same page. So I'd probably give this suit a 9 out of 10. I'll tell you what my biggest issue with it is. But going on that symbol, when I first saw that symbol, like on the teaser poster, I was like, it's perfect. And then seeing it on the costume, I feel the same way. I love the Superman symbol. I've seen some complaints that they think it's too small, and it is smaller than
that is another
Superman symbol. I think
that for me, that's a nitpick.
That is a little bit of a nitpick. I actually think it works really well on this suit in this movie. I love it. My biggest issue with the suit, which is something I didn't dislike at first, but I've kind of grown to dislike it, is
yep, I knew exactly what you were going to say.
I think it's kind of nice that it goes all the way up to his neck. That's personally how I like I hate when my t-shirts have like stretched out collars. Like I have to have a shirt that's like hugging my neck. So I would love that Superman suit, but I think the cape just looks really awkward coming out of the neck hole that is just such a small opening. I think a Superman suit works so much better when it's got that wider neck and the cape can kind of come out in a more natural.
I 100% agree, and I believe that is why the Superman symbol looks too small. Is because the collar. There's more space in between the top of the symbol and the neck of the suit. If you lower the neck of the suit and widen it just a little bit, it creates the illusion that the symbol is bigger.
Yeah. That's a good point. I never thought about that, but you're probably absolutely right. For some reason, Superman and Lois, the TV show, that suit also has a very high collar with the cape coming out of the collar area. And
that is one of two gripes about that suit that I have.
Yeah.
In Superman and Lois. One, I think it has too much padding.
Yeah.
And two is the
collar,
the neck. But if you fix those two things, that Superman suit is perfect.
I think if you fix the neck on this suit would be pretty much perfect as well. Yeah. I even like, I've seen some people kind of nitpick as well about the amount of Superman symbols on the suit, because if you look at the chest emblem real closely, it's got the like tiny little Superman symbols all over it. It's like that's the texture of it. And then there's the Superman symbol on the belt. It's like that's like the buckle of the belt. And then I don't know if you ever see it in the movie, but I've got like a book that's like the visual dictionary or whatever, of Superman Returns. And on the bottom of the boot is a bunch of Superman symbols as well. Yeah. None of that has bothered me. I actually really, when I first saw the suit and saw that the belt buckle was the Superman symbol, I thought that worked for me. And I just like that it's, I do too. And I like that it's, I love Henry Cavill suit. Don't get me wrong. I think it works really well for those movies, but I like that they gave us like the actual kind of like tights, like it was an updated version of the Christopher Reeve suit. And I think it works really well, especially in this film.
Yeah. Yeah. The trunks, we got to talk about the trunks. I like the trunks on this suit. I think this particular suit would look awkward without the trunks.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree.
But I am, I've always said I am team no trunks. Anytime that I can have no trunks, I'm all for having no trunks.
Right.
But I do believe that the Superman that we're going to get in James Gunn's Superman movie will have trunks, because we had, however many years of no trunks.
Right.
With Henry Cavill. So I do believe that it is time to switch it up for the other side of the fan base. I think it's only fair. I'm like I said, I'm team no trunks, but I'm also fair. So.
Sure. There you go. That's nice. Yeah. I'm still hoping we see an official image of him in the suit soon. I know they're still shooting, but hopefully we'll get something here soon. Yeah. I would love to see what he looks like in the suit. I know it's going to be good.
Oh yeah.
I love the Art Deco style of this movie too. I love the kind of like the Daily Planet building and like the lobby of the building. It looks very kind of old school. That's something that they did differently than the Donner version. The Donner cut pretty much just took New York City and said it was Metropolis.
Yeah.
And it even had the Statue of Liberty there and stuff. This movie set out to make Metropolis like feel like its own city.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that kind of Art Deco look to a lot of the buildings and the style of it.
So, as far as the architecture, yes. Costume design and makeup, not for me.
Specifically in reference to who? Like Jimmy Olsen?
Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah.
Clark Kent, Richard, Lois Lane. It tries too hard to fit itself within the Donner universe, right, as far as its aesthetic.
Yeah.
the Richard Donner universe, although it is set, late 70s, early 80s, it was for its time. And this Superman, it is set in the present day because, they have flip phones.
Yeah, they got cell phones and all that. Yeah.
But people, at least the main characters, they're dressed in ways that people wouldn't dress anymore. And it takes me out of it. I can't fully immerse myself in the movie because it's like I'm watching a play. I'm watching people perform, and it's because I think it's because it's inconsistent. You have people dressed like it's 1978 with a flip phone.
Right.
It doesn't work for me.
It has never bothered me. I know the only one that I kind of feel that way is Jimmy Olsen, because he's supposed to be kind of a younger character, and I don't really feel like a younger person in present day or in 2006 would dress like that. Everybody else, I don't feel like they're dressed from the 70s. I feel like their outfits are decently present. Like especially Richard, I never have felt like he feels like he's from the 70s.
Lois feels a little certain scenes.
Lois's clothes, I could kind of understand it, but they're all just dressed kind of business, like, and it is, and Clark especially, I could feel like would be okay being kind of dressed like out of fashion because it kind of goes with the character of the nerdy, forgettable Clark Kent. And Jason, the little kid, he would never dress like he does in this movie either. His mom obviously dresses him, but he's got like the sweater vest on and stuff like that, And then Kitty feels a little bit out of the past, but I always assumed that was just Kitty's style.
Yeah, I didn't mention Kitty because for that reason, I feel like that's her style. I feel like she would dress like that no matter what.
Right.
But everybody else, it just feels out of place to me, man. I could never, as much as I like this movie, I could never fully immerse myself in it because of that.
Gotcha. I think the one thing that takes me out of the film in terms of style, if you will, is as much as I like the architecture and things like we talked about, there are a lot of moments in the film that you can just tell we're on a soundstage.
Absolutely.
The rooftop scene with Lois and Clark, or Lois and Superman, the rooftop bank robbery scene,
Krypton, the new Krypton,
and even when they're on the yacht, when Lex Luthor walks up to the top right before they fire the rocket, you can just tell they're on a soundstage and that they're not outside. It's just those. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the lighting that, or just how. I don't know if it's just how they shot it or what. But it's just you can tell they're all sets. Yeah, and that takes me out of the movie a little bit.
I personally think that was on purpose.
It could have been,
and I mean I agree with you. It doesn't work for me, and I don't know why. Again, like if that is on purpose, I understand that choice because you want to liken yourself to your predecessors, but
right.
It just doesn't work for me in this particular movie.
I agree. That's probably maybe my biggest complaint about the film is that it just, those moments just really kind of take you out of it. And and like you said, it kind of makes you feel like you're watching a play. It doesn't feel real in those moments.
Yeah. But again, I think that's just for both of us, that's probably just a personal preference, because I know that there are some movies that definitely do that. Like Barbie. Barbie was 100%. Have you seen Barbie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Barbie was 100% supposed to look like it was fake.
Right.
And it worked.
Right. Yeah.
With this, it just doesn't, it doesn't work for me.
Right. And that's because, as far as I know, it's not supposed to look fake. Like I've in Barbie, like when they're in Barbie land or whatever it is, that is meant to look like a toy set come to life, and it's meant to look like when they're driving in the car and stuff, like it's meant to look very fake. When she gets to the real world and she goes to like the Mattel building and stuff, that looks real because it's meant to be the real world. If that had still looked fake, then it would have been an issue, You know what I mean?
Correct.
And that's how I feel about this. Like when they're on the rooftop of the Daily Planet, they're supposed to be on the roof of a building, not on a soundstage meant to look like the roof of a building. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's why it takes me out of it, because it's portrayed as real, but it doesn't look very real.
Right.
How do you feel about Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane?
I like Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane. This might make some people mad, but I prefer Kate Bosworth over Amy Adams.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't dislike Amy Adams. I think she's a wonderful actor. It's just that her Lois Lane was a bit too aloof for me.
Mm.
This Lois Lane feels almost like ripped straight out of the animated series. Like almost. And her Lois Lane was like so in line with Margot Kidder. I think her Lois Lane is very, very underrated. I would say she's not my favorite. My favorite, like out of all of them, is the animated series.
Okay.
And then Erica Durance.
Yeah.
I love her Lois Lane. She is feisty, and I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But as far as number 3, it's interchangeable between her and Margot Kidder.
Yeah, I don't dislike Kate Bosworth, but I kind of like Lois Lane being kind of feisty, like you said, which I didn't get from Amy Adams as much either. And even the few times that Amy Adams' Lois was meant to be feisty, it didn't really come across that way. Didn't feel like it. And that's kind of how I feel with Kate Bosworth. When she's supposed to be kind of feisty, I don't really buy it with her either.
I bought hers more than
Amy Adams,
though.
Oh, that's fair.
Amy Adams just felt like she just didn't care.
Mm.
I mean, which is fine. Again, that was probably on purpose.
Right.
It just didn't work for me because I like some fire in my Lois Lane.
Right. I do too. I agree. And I didn't really feel it as much with this one or with Amy Adams, but I don't dislike Kate Bosworth. I think she makes for a good Lois Lane. She's wearing a wig too, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of wigs in this movie.
Yeah.
But
I like her wig. I like Lois Lane with curly hair.
Oh,
or like wavy hair. Wasn't really curly, it was wavy.
Yeah. James Marsden plays Richard, who is Lois's fiance.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie is the reason Cyclops is not really in X-Men The Last Stand, because he was doing this movie. They shot this in Australia, and I don't know where they shot The Last Stand, but I think it was in the US as far as I know. So how do you feel about Richard and the inclusion of Richard and James Marsden as Richard?
I like Richard.
Yeah.
I felt that it added some drama with
the love triangle, or it created a love triangle, I guess.
Yeah. The love triangle kind of made Lois kind of crappy. It's a little bit, but right. Like I said, added to the drama. I like that, and I like that he was active.
Yes.
In the story,
right?
And not just active, but he was invested and not like played for a joke.
Right.
It kind of reminded me of the Doctor in Venom. How I don't say I did like it, but because I like that movie. Is not great as it is. I like that movie. They did the opposite of what they did with that character, even though this movie came out first. Whereas that guy was played kind of as a joke.
Yeah.
Or like, the straight man to Tom Hardy's, goofiness,
right,
craziness.
Yeah.
They didn't do that with Richard in this movie. Richard is actively invested in the story, and I like that a lot.
I do too. I like it a lot too. And they could have easily gone that route. They could have made Richard either goofy or dumb or a jerk, like an a-hole.
Yeah, just not desirable
to make us want to root for Superman, and they didn't do that. They made Richard like a genuinely good guy.
Yeah.
And who cares about Lois and cares about Jason. and is active, like you said. So I really love that they did that. They didn't make it like this really clear cut kind of choice, like we want Superman to be with Lois kind of thing. And we didn't talk about the premise of this film, but the whole idea of this film is that Superman has been gone for 5 years.
Yeah.
In search of Krypton because astronomers thought they found it.
Uh-huh.
And when he comes back, he finds out that the world has essentially moved on without him. And he's got to deal with that. And I personally love that premise. I think that it just works so well. And seeing, because Superman, part of Superman's whole like mythos is he's, for lack of a better term, alienated. He doesn't, he feels alone. And he has connections with certain people. And one of the people that he has a connection with is Lois Lane. And now that he's come back, he's like lost that connection. She has moved on. She's with another guy now, and she's got a kid. And he has to deal with that. And I think it's really interesting, and it makes for, like you said, kind of good drama. And I actually kind of think it's a little crappy of Superman to try to like almost win Lois back when he knows that she's with this guy. but he doesn't like, they almost kiss on the rooftop and then she stops it. But then after that, he doesn't really, he's not like trying to win her back and pull her away from
he's
Jake,
not
from
actively
Richard.
pursuing her.
Right.
I think I agree with you. I think that it's a very human aspect to the story as far as Superman's character development is concerned. We have to see him grieve the loss of the love of his life, not in the terms of death, but the death of something that once was.
Right.
When this movie ends, we don't see them get back together.
No.
Like it's over.
Right.
And he has to deal with that, and that's something that we don't normally see with Superman. So I thought that was one of the better parts of the movie for sure.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Let's see what else to talk about.
The music, man. I was wondering when we was going to get to that.
Yeah, the music. So John Ottman does the score for this film, and the music in this movie, it was my number 3 or number 2. No, number 2 on my top 15 scores. No, it wasn't. Speed was number 2. It was number 3. And I just kind of forgot how good it was until rewatching this movie. And I've been listening to the score today because it is fire.
I was watching this with my wife last night, and I got so excited when the music started and the credits started. It was like, oh man, I felt like a little kid in that moment. Like John Ottman really did his thing with this score, and I love how he incorporates the John Williams theme for certain scenes, especially when like Superman actually returns.
Right.
I love that scene, and I love the music in that scene.
We got to talk about the plane sequence. That whole sequence is
great.
Probably it might be the best part of the movie. Seeing that on the big screen for the first time, I'd seen glimpses of it in the trailers and stuff, but seeing that from beginning to end the first time, it gave me chills. I mean, it's still, there are parts of this movie that still kind of give me chills, and a lot of it is because of some of that music that he incorporates.
Yeah.
But when Lois is on the plane is having issues, and she looks out the window, and it's been 5 years since she's even seen Superman, and she sees this just fly past the window. It's unbelievable. And then the way that Bryan Singer kind of shot this, to where you see his feet land on the plane, and then you kind of get a close up of him doing the heat vision, and we don't get like the full body shot until he's lifting the shuttle, and then the music is playing. It's just
so Superman.
It is so Superman. And then the whole sequence of him trying to catch the plane while it's falling, it's one of those things where like you never really, at least I never really thought about it until watching this movie, like how hard it would be even as Superman to stop a plane from falling, because a plane is just so big. But I just some of the flying sequences in this sequence, flying shots, I guess you could say, are just breathtaking to me. Bryan Singer like really did a good job with the flying moments in this movie, I think. And that whole plane sequence is just unbelievable. I love it.
As far as the flying sequences, there are two sequences that I really love. The first, which is actually later in the movie, when he's flying to New Krypton, there's a really great shot. It's quick, but there's a really great shot of him flying over the ocean. I love that shot.
Yeah.
And there's another shot earlier in the movie when he and Lois are on the rooftop and they're kind of like floating past the Daily Planet globe.
Yeah.
Oh, that is that's probably the best shot in the movie.
Yes. It's stuff like it's those types of flying moments I miss because Henry Cavill's Superman or Zack Snyder's Superman, when he would take off or land or whatever, it was always very fast. Like he was just like
sonic boom.
Yeah, just take off, which is cool. And I like it. But like when he says goodbye to Lois on the roof and the shot is from above and you see him flying up towards the camera. I just love that. Like it just looks so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a moment too, where he goes to the Fortress of Solitude and he flies up towards the camera and then goes down and the camera kind of tilts down with him. That really looks good. And then there's like a wide shot of him descending into the fortress and the lighting and everything. It just looks so good and so Superman-y.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite moments with John Ottman's score and just the visuals is when New Krypton is being lifted out of the water. And I think Lex's helicopter like flies away in the shot and the camera just keeps pushing in towards the island. And a piece of the rock falls off, and then you see Superman carrying it on his back, and the music starts going into the John Williams theme right there. Dude, every time. It gets me every time.
It's awesome. I love it.
We could talk about every Superman moment in this movie and just how good it is. Like, two of my other favorite moments. I love when he flies on his back, uses the heat vision, and melts the falling glass.
Oh, that was so awesome! And like, it's when he turns around, it's like, it's so awesome.
That when I saw that for the first time, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then him flying through the Daily Planet to catch the globe as it's falling.
Yeah,
that is also just incredible to me.
It's reckless, but it's incredible.
It's a little reckless. Thankfully, nobody's in the building, I guess. Everybody had evacuated, but still, it was, but it was cool. It was definitely a cool visual. One thing we got to talk about that we haven't mentioned really is the inclusion of Jason. And we learn, obviously, later in the movie that he's got some superpowers.
Yeah. He at least has super strength.
Throws a piano and kills Brutus, which, by the way, I never made this connection until watching it yesterday. I don't know if it's a connection. I'm actually curious. In the very beginning of the film, Perry White asks Jimmy Olsen if he has photos from that birthday clown massacre thing. And I have always, I guess it depends on how you interpret that sentence. I've always assumed it was somebody kind of John Wayne Gacy-esque, somebody dressed as a birthday clown who massacred people. But I guess it could have also been a bunch of birthday clowns who got massacred. He doesn't really say. He just says that birthday clown massacre thing. But once they're on the yacht, one of Lex Luthor's henchmen is wearing a beanie, and he takes off his beanie, and he's got a clown tattooed on the back of his head. And so I was, this time around, like, I'd never thought of it before until watching it yesterday. I was like, is he the guy? Is he the birthday clown massacre killer guy? Because that would be kind of interesting.
I never thought of that.
But anyway, he plays piano with Jason, and then eventually he starts to beat up Lois because Lois was able to fax her coordinates, which is kind of funny to me that they had a fax machine on the yacht. And I guess,
I thought of that too. I've actually always thought of that. Even when I was like, why is there a fax machine on the yacht? Like,
right.
I mean, I guess it makes sense because
it's by the piano and stuff.
Yeah, like that is so awkward.
Yeah, it's a little convenient, I will say.
Yeah.
But anyway, he realizes she was trying to fax something and starts kind of beating her up, which makes Jason. I do also like that Jason also has like asthma. So he's got like these human kind of imperfections, but he also might have some Superman powers, which I think is really kind of interesting. But I have, some people I think thought it was cheesy that Superman, there was like the kid with superpowers in the film. How did you feel about it?
I liked it. I didn't think it was cheesy. Again, I liked the drama that it added to the story, and what I really liked about it was that Lex was smart enough to figure it out.
Yes,
right away. I love the look that Kevin Spacey gives the kid. He's like, "Who is that boy's father?"
His father. Yeah, and another moment that I love in that scene, I love that Lex Luthor was able to piece that together without anything. He just saw how the kid was looking at the kryptonite bar or whatever you want, the cylinder, and was like, "Who is that boy's father?" And then right after that, he gets I thought this was kind of smart. The way that Lois learns the coordinates is the guy comes over the intercom and he says, "Mr. Luthor, we've arrived." And Lex, still talking to Lois, goes, "Are you sure?" Because she says that it's Richard's kid.
I love that moment.
And then the guy goes, "Yes, sir." And he says the coordinates out loud. So then now Lois knows the coordinates, and that's how she's able to fax it, which I was like, oh, that's actually kind of smart.
That is good writing.
Yeah, I agree.
That is fantastic writing right there.
So yeah, I really like Jason. He's never bothered me. If they had gone a little overboard with the powers thing, maybe, but just him throwing the piano. And then
you don't even actually see him throw the piano.
That's true.
You see the piano fly across the room, and Jason is just standing
there with his arms
where the
out,
piano was.
Right. And then there's one moment where Lois is wondering if he's going to actually be able to open the door on the yacht. Oh my God, we got to talk about the yacht sinking. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I love that scene too. But anyway, she thinks he's going to be able to open the door because he's got super strength, but then Richard shows up. So we never see him use any sort of power after that. But then at the end of the movie, when Superman is in the hospital, she says to him, like, "I want to tell you something." And she whispers something that we don't hear, but then it cuts to a shot of Jason running his hands over the Superman S of the costume that's on the chair. And so it's
in my head, he heard it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Yeah. In my head canon, he heard what she said.
I agree 100% because he goes to her house and says the whole speech about the father becomes the son and the son becomes the father or whatever.
Father.
And I love that whole aspect of the whole.
No, I'm talking about Jason.
Oh, you think Jason heard it?
I think Jason heard what Lois said.
Oh, maybe he did. That's cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I like the whole aspect of Jason being included and Superman, who has felt even more alienated now that he's come back, feeling like there's somebody
like me.
I'm a father now, and there's that connection he has. I love it. I think it's really kind of poetic, and I like it a lot.
Yeah.
The yacht, the sinking of the yacht, when Richard and Lois and Jason are in the pantry or whatever they called it, and the door closes. Number one, she gets hit hard by a really heavy metal door. And she's fine later. I feel like her head would have been busted open and she would have had a cracked skull or something.
Yeah.
But it's a Superman
at the
movie,
very least concussed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, the shot of Richard holding Jason and Lois, and he's like, he can't get the door open. He's like kind of putting his hand on the glass, and you see them sink below the water. I was like, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
But then when Superman's feet land and we get that shot of the symbol and then him, this is another, I love this shot and I love this moment, but it's another one where you can kind of tell they're in like a tank on a soundstage or something. But when he comes out of the water, lifting the yacht, I love that. And they play the Superman music there and everything. But the thing I like even more about this scene is when he pulls the door off and he takes Richard's hand and he goes, "Have you got them?" And Richard goes, "Yeah." And Superman just lets go of the yacht and the yacht falls.
Yeah.
While they just stay suspended in midair. Oh, gosh. It's so good. I love it.
It is good. It is really good.
So yeah, I am a big fan of this movie. Clearly, it's
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite superhero movies for sure. Oh, there's one more final thing I want to say, and I hate. This is one moment that I actually really dislike, and I never noticed it until I finally watched it on physical with the subtitles on or the captions on or whatever. There's a moment where they're on New Krypton and Lex is starting to beat up Superman.
Yeah.
And, he goes, kryptonite, that whole thing.
Yeah.
He starts kicking Superman and Superman catches his foot. And then before he can kind of do anything, Lex's goons grab him and start dragging him away.
Uh-huh.
Every time I saw it in the theater and every time I watched it at home before I turned the captions on, I just saw it. Superman was just kind of yelling like, ah, ah.
Yeah.
But if you turn the captions on, and now I can't not hear it, and I really wish I had just never heard it. He says when he's getting dragged away, he says, "I'm still Superman," and I really don't like that line.
What?
Yeah, go back and watch that scene. Turn on the captions, you'll hear it. He at first he's like, ah, but then he goes, "I'm still Superman." And
why would he say that?
I don't know. I think it's the dumbest line. I don't know why he would say that.
That is stupid.
I agree. And so, yeah, I genuinely kind of hate that moment. But so I felt like I had to talk about it. But yeah, I could gush about the rest of the scenes in the movie. Superman being saved by Lois and Richard. Going up into the sun, flying down, all that stuff. It's just so good. So, but I think we've pretty much discussed this movie at length, so we can wrap it up, I suppose. What would you rate Superman Returns, Stu?
This is tough. I'm going to give it 4 Daily Planet globes out of 5.
I'm tempted to give it 5 just because I love it so much, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna go with 4.5, which might be higher than what most people would give it. And part of it I think is nostalgia, just for Superman in general. Part of it is just how it made me feel in the theater. But I also genuinely think it's a good, entertaining movie. So for me, it's 4.5 Daily Planet globes out of 5. So
I was tempted to give it a 3.5.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my 4.
That's cool. That's So yeah, I'm glad we finally have talked about Superman Returns. I would love to do a commentary episode of this. John and I did 2 commentary episodes. We've never done any more. But this is a movie. This and The Dark Knight, I think, would be fun to do a commentary for.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. We'd love to know what you think about Superman Returns. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can comment on our posts on Instagram. Or you can comment down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I think that about wraps it up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.